Readjusting the old chair. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. So it has been a while since I have filmed, probably over a month. I usually try to get videos filmed a week in advance, so I'd schedule them. I think they were going on Monday and Friday. But if you follow me on Instagram at all, you notice my last couple posts were, or at least one of them was baby related. So I gave birth about 6 weeks early. So this video is going to be all about kind of what happened and why she came so early. So if you're interested, just keep watching. If you don't care, click right on out of that video. But this is kind of about what happened and how my doctor kind of saved both me and my baby's lives. So let's go ahead and get into it. So my last couple videos I mentioned I was like maybe 32-ish weeks pregnant, I think. And basically, all of a sudden, like, about 30, 32, maybe 31 week appointment, I can't remember, my doctor noticed, he's like, oh, your bump is measuring kind of small. Then again, like, we had to think about it, first pregnancy, so there's always the unknown, and I'm a petite person, so he said, I don't know if it's because you're petite or something else is going on. So what he did was during one of our growth ultrasounds, he noticed your bump is small and your baby's measuring in the 10th percentile, which is kind of small. She was proportionate, but very, very small. At that point, she was only about 3 pounds 6 ounces, which is a little bit less than she should have been for just a normal gestation, like about 31, 32 weeks. So at that point, normally babies are closer to 4 pounds or 4.5 pounds. And normally you see babies at birth weights these days that are like 7 or 8 pounds. So my baby was just showing that she was going to be really, really small. And since my bump was starting to measure small and I already carried low, it was just kind of almost a little bit of a concern. So he was very cautious. Instead of just saying, oh, it'll be a small baby, he said, I want you to go to this, same hospital, just he's a little more specialized and the ultrasound equipment is a little more accurate. So he says, I want you to go here and have him take a look as well. So we did that. Funny thing is, at every OB appointment or whatever, they always, take your blood pressure, your temperature, things like that. They check for protein and things like that just to make sure all is going well and nothing is going to go downhill. So that morning, we woke up to go to our ultrasound, and I almost felt a little bit anxious, and I could really feel it in my arms feeling tense. So we walk in there, and before you do anything, they take your blood pressure. And I said, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling nervous. They're like, okay. Turns out, right then my blood pressure was pretty elevated. So they're like, okay, let's go to the ultrasound. Let's go ahead and do that. Then afterwards we'll take it again. So we go to the ultrasound, and that doctor as well finds the baby is looking at like the 10th percentile for size and weight, which is small. He's like, okay, considering you just had high blood pressure and this kid is small, he's like, some kids are just small, but if your blood pressure's still high after this ultrasound, we might be looking at intrauterine growth restriction or some preeclampsia. So afterwards we take it again, and it's still pretty elevated. And so I have to stay in there for about 5 or 10 minutes so they can just start getting a reading. And this is where things are starting to kind of almost make me a little bit nervous. And so I'm sitting in there, and all of a sudden he comes in, and he has pulled all my blood pressures for all of my appointments, and they've all been normal up until now. And this is about 33 weeks. He said, okay, I'm thinking you have preeclampsia because you're measuring small and you have high blood pressure right now. And he's like, it's not an anxiety thing because your blood pressure would not be that high. He's like, so I'm going to send you to labor and delivery so we can monitor you, and I'm calling your doctor. I was like, okay, because the way he explains it is like this, the way he explains it is, this is a picture of a train. He doesn't know how fast it's moving, but he needs to monitor it so that nothing goes wrong. So I get admitted for high blood pressure and being small. So this is basically where things are starting to happen, and they are basically, over the next 48 hours, diagnosed me with preeclampsia. Blood work looked normal at this point. There was no protein in my urine. Sorry if that's TMI, but that's one of the signs or symptoms of pre-E. And with pre-E, like preeclampsia, sometimes it's asymptomatic until that 3rd trimester. So basically it just all of a sudden shows up, which is why they take your blood pressure, blood work. Blood work is to look for any like thing wrong with platelets or liver enzymes or anything like that. It all looked normal. So they kept me about 24 hours, and we had to make sure my blood pressures didn't skyrocket, because if they would have skyrocketed, they would have had to take her right then and there at 33 weeks. So my doctor comes in over the next couple of days to let us know what's going to happen, and I end up getting 2 steroid shots, one in each hip, just in case my blood pressure skyrockets and they have to take her out early, whether that's induced labor or C-section, which is nuts. So I get 2 steroid shots just to kind of help her lungs develop and her other organs develop, because it's so early. It's only 33 weeks, and I'll be 34 weeks pregnant in 2 days. So it was Monday. I would have been 34 weeks pregnant on the following Wednesday. So Tuesday I actually get to go home. My blood pressures were stable enough, but I was on bed rest, and I had to take my blood pressure about 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, and night. And if my numbers, it had to be basically blood pressure is one number over the other. Normal blood pressure is like 120 over whatever. If mine got to be 160 over like 99 or 100, if either of those numbers reach that, I have to go back to the hospital and go straight to labor and delivery. So over the next couple days, we had to get a blood pressure cuff, and I'm literally sitting in bed. All you can basically do is get up and go to the bathroom, and that's about it. Or take a really quick shower, not too long and not too hot. Because with pre-E, if you start getting dizzy or really bad headache or see white floating spots, it can mean your blood pressure is going up, and you could basically get dizzy and faint. So, fun stuff. So that's basically what's happening for the next couple days. And since I had pre-E, basically, you have to go in twice a week for an NST, which is a non-stress test, where for about 15 minutes, they strap these things on your belly, and they monitor baby movements, baby heart rate, and if you're having any contractions. So this is about Tuesday I go home. My next appointment for the NST is on Friday. So this is all within the same week. So I go home Tuesday. I'm home Wednesday and Thursday on bed rest. Literally that Friday, I have my appointment at 11:15 in the morning, and I'm now 34 weeks pregnant plus 2 days on that Friday. So we hit the 34-week mark. So I go on Friday morning, and I'm starting to feel really uncomfortable for the past couple of days. Like, my back is killing me, and my body's just starting to get really comfortable and achy, and no matter what, like, it was to the point where I couldn't sleep. I was so uncomfortable, not crying in tears, but so uncomfortable I couldn't sleep. I didn't want to eat a whole lot. Even drinking water almost hurt. So I go in, I'm just sitting in my chair, miserable. And then I go into my appointment, and I go to the bathroom. I can barely get any urine out, which is insane because I've never had a problem with that. It was a tiny, tiny bit. Then again, I hadn't drinking a whole lot, but I'd drinking some water that morning. And then I go in for the chair. They strap me up, and they basically start going. And every time you feel a baby movement, you press a little button, and it records it. So they're doing this for about 10-15 minutes. And she seems like she's kind of taking a nap, maybe moving a little bit. And she'd been moving a lot that morning, so I didn't really think anything of it. But within that 15 to 20, maybe 30 minutes, they would come and check on you, and things just aren't progressing as you would like them to. They're okay, but they're not great. So, like, with the heart rate, they look for a variation of heart rates, anything from like 138 to 150 to 160 something. And they were okay, but not great. Baby movements okay, but not great or super strong, but no contractions. So he's like, okay, not great. Let's go do a biological profile, which is a very specific ultrasound where they look at your water levels, baby movements, baby heartbeat, and baby breathing, which is breathing in amniotic fluid. So we're sitting in there, and she seems like she's basically taking a nap. Her heart rate is pretty okay. A little bit of baby movement, not a whole lot, but then no breathing, which means basically she's just not opening up her mouth, just things like that, or lung movement, things like that. So we sit in there for a good maybe 20 to 30 minutes again, kind of moving me on my side to see if that'll help move her. Nothing's happening. And again, my doctor OB is coming in every few minutes to check. And at one point he says, okay, give it 5 more minutes and I'm going to come back and check. So 5 more minutes comes by, still no breathing. So he comes back, he says, okay. Like, he's just basically thinking out loud. He's saying, I'm glad I gave you those steroid shots because that makes me feel better about if I have to deliver you today. And thinking about it, it had been about 2 or 3 days since I got those steroid shots. So things are kind of almost starting to go downhill a little bit. So it's like, okay, I'm sending you to labor and delivery. So I basically just have to walk up to the building right next door. I go up to labor and delivery. You tell them why you are there. So I've had, up to this point, elevated blood pressure, not a whole lot of baby movement, not great breathing, and I'm just feeling really uncomfortable. So we go to labor and delivery. We get me all hooked up, and they come in to do blood work. And they put me on another blood pressure cuff. Blood pressures are staying elevated. And then the nurse comes in, and she's like, just talking about, did he say that he might be sectioning you today? I'm like, yeah, he said I might be getting a C-section. And I'll go into that versus like a vaginal birth in just a minute here. And let me readjust in my chair. So things are happening. I've called my mom. I've called my husband. And I basically told him, I was like, yeah, they're trying to put an IV in me now. And he's like, oh gosh. Because he knows once the IV goes in you, things are happening very, very quickly. So he leaves work. And I'm just laying there in the bed super uncomfortable. And they've taken my blood work by now. So now basically what they're waiting on is the doctor to look at my blood work and basically make a decision whether it's going to happen today or not. And I went into the doctor at 11:15 that morning. It's about 12 or 1 by this time, maybe 2 o'clock. So the nurses keep coming in to check my blood pressures. They're staying elevated. They're starting to get an IV in me to keep me hydrated. And all of a sudden, like, basically what happens is we ask, does the doctor know anything? A few times they're like, we don't know. And then at about 2 or 3 something, maybe all of a sudden they're like, okay, we're calling the doctor to check your blood work. About 5 minutes later, he walks in, he's like, you have HELLP syndrome, your blood work looks like crud. He's like, this baby's not going to tolerate labor. So all of a sudden things are happening where basically is we're doing a C-section basically now, and we got to get you prepped. And basically, so while you're consenting to all these things, you find out I have HELLP syndrome. So basically what HELLP syndrome is, it's an acronym. It's all capitals, HELLP, and it stands for hypertension, which is the high blood pressure, elevated liver, which is the blood work, which is liver enzymes being elevated, and then low blood platelets. So it's hypertension, elevated liver, low platelets, I think. Basically what HELLP syndrome is, it's a very severe form of preeclampsia, where basically you can have a seizure if things go really bad really fast. So, and considering the baby's so small, he said this baby might not tolerate labor, which means she might not make it if we don't have a C-section, although there are risks with the C-section. So all of a sudden, basically 1 million doctors come flooding in the room. I get hooked up. I get hit up with some magnesium and some numbing pain, which basically what magnesium does is it forces your blood pressure to lower so that you don't basically have a stroke or something, which can be very, very dangerous. So, and magnesium also makes you really warm, and it really messes with your eyes, so it's hard to focus, and you all of a sudden get really sleepy. So, I'm basically being shot up with this magnesium and all these numbing things in my IV while an anesthesiologist is coming in to tell me about the spinal block I'm going to get to numb me for my C-section, which is horrible because you're trying to follow along and sign all these consent papers while you're practically like about to pass out because the magnesium messes with you so much, which is nuts. So then, basically, they get you all hooked up, they get all your drugs in you, and it's so funny because I said how uncomfortable I was. Once they shoot you up with those medications, you feel fantastic. You are so numb, like my back no longer hurt within about 5 seconds. It was fantastic. I was like, besides not being able to stay awake, I'm feeling pretty good at this point. And I'm really warm because the magnesium will really warm you up because they shoot you up with a pretty strong dose of it. And then they just started prepping everything. So they prep for about 10 or 15 minutes. My husband's waiting in the hallway. They wheel me down to the operation room and they take me in. They get everything ready. They bring him in, and within about all of a sudden 5 seconds, I think you're numb this whole time. So basically they just say if you're feeling nauseous after you get your spinal block, because that means you could have a seizure, which I never did, thank God. But all of a sudden they're like, she's here. I'm like, wait, what? That's it? She's here? That was fast. Like, about probably, I don't even know if it was a minute or 5 minutes, but as soon as my husband was there, they put him right next to me on the table. I'm strapped down, and there's a huge sheet, so I can't see anything, and all of a sudden they said she's here. I was like, that was fast, and we were so relieved because she literally came out screaming and crying. But also, I mentioned earlier, intrauterine growth restriction. She was about 3 pounds 7 ounces at birth, and that was like 34 weeks pregnant, which is super tiny. It turns out I'm a small person, but my umbilical cord and my placenta were also very, very small. And you could almost tell too because my bump was so small. I almost think it was starting to shrink, which is like, oh my goodness. So basically, they pull her out and they hold her there for a few minutes just to get those extra couple of minutes of cord blood because that's good for a baby. Then the NICU staff, because she's so small, we automatically know that she's going to the NICU. They take her, they weigh her. My husband cuts the rest of the cord off, and they dry her off, and they weigh her. And then we have about 3 minutes with her, and they whisk her away, and it's done. All while the time, my OB, he'd already shoved a catheter up me because I can't move, and I'm numb, so I can't go pee. So I have a catheter shoved up me, but I was already numb before that. I'm pretty sure they put that in before they ripped me open for my C-section. But all of a sudden, for some reason, I don't know why, he like invited my husband to stand up and look. He's like, but I'll warn you, there's a lot of blood. Because with that low blood platelets, there's that bleeding risk because your blood can't clot as well. So he glues me shut, and he basically like, he doesn't stitch me up because they just use glue now. And then they put those like strips on you to hold you together. And all of a sudden, like everybody leaves the room. They ask you who your pediatrician is, yada, yada, yada. She's gone, and my husband went with her to the NICU just to make sure everything went well. And I'm surrounded by all these wonderful nurses who basically helped me get off the table and wheel me down to my recovery room, which is still my labor and delivery room just because it was no big deal because I wasn't moving for about a day. And I am so numb. It's insane. But basically, that's the story. Yeah. So, with HELLP syndrome, it's very, very dangerous. Basically, I said I was uncomfortable. Like, there was a huge knot all up and down my back, and I started having this weird pain right around, like, where your bra band would be. And basically what that was is my liver enzymes starting to elevate and get very uncomfortable. So, whenever you have that, it's basically right under your rib cage, upper abdomen pain on your right side. That's the liver pain that they talk about. Also, any swelling, severe headaches that don't go away with Tylenol, basically just hyperactivity in your legs when they take your vitals and your reflexes, your legs might shake, you can kick really easily, like you try to relax your body as much as you can, but you just can't control it because this HELLP and this pre-E just makes everything go downhill so fast. So she was born 6 weeks early, but I'm so thankful that my doctor was so overly cautious because he caught it. Because I am a petite person, but he didn't want to just say, okay, you're just petite, your baby's gonna be small. He's like, let's take a look. So I'm so thankful that he did everything he needed to do. The doctors and the nurses took every step that they needed to and basically saved me and my baby's life. And she's now a very healthy, she's still small, but she's gaining weight. She is now 1 month old. Her birthday was April 7th, and she was born at 4:15 p.m. So she's about a month, exactly a month old today. So yeah, that's pretty much her story and our story, and thank you so much for watching. If you want any further updates, just leave them in the comments below, and yeah, see you guys later. Bye!